The Australian Financial Review.
It was devastating, but I'm living Plan B, and Plan B is so much better than Plan A. I would have been comfortable, well looked after, but not ambitious for myself in that way. And I look back on it and think it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
Hi, I'm Sally Patton, editor of Boss from the Australian Financial Review, and welcome to 15 Minutes with the Boss, a podcast about success and failure and everything in between. And along the way, we're hoping to get some really great advice from our leaders. My guest today is Dr. Toni Meath, the principal at Melbourne Girls Grammar. Hi, Toni, how are you?
Hi, Sally. It's really lovely to be here.
Now, Toni, as I said, you're the principal of Melbourne Girls Grammar, which is an independent school for girls. It is a day and boarding school with about 1,100 students from early learning to year 12. You have a staff of around 500, and your staff and students are spread across 2 campuses. And you have been in the role for coming up to 7 years. That sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It is, but I love it. When you sort of spell it out like that, it does sound like a huge responsibility, but it's something I've worked towards all my life, and so it's a great joy.
Fantastic. Okay, we've only got 15 minutes. Let's start the clock right now and get going. My first question is, what happens in your morning routine? What time do you get up? What do you do first?
I'm a morning person, Sally. I wake every morning at 4:45. I look at my emails in bed. I sort of look at my calendar, sort of sense check for the day, and then hop up, get ready, drive to school, and then I walk the Tan, which is a walking track which encircles the Botanic Gardens in Melbourne. So it's a great way to sort of get my exercise in at the beginning of the day. I'm a thinker and an introvert. I like to have that time as I'm walking just to kind of reflect of how I'm going to approach the day. I like to be at school before the students and the staff as much as possible.
You mentioned that you're an introvert, but you have a huge community of students and their parents around you. How do you cope with that?
I think my introversion gives me a super strength to strategize, think, read over everything, dot I's, cross T's. I'm a great reader and I like to scrutinize. I love data and look for trends, and I have to write a lot in this position as well, and so my introversion gives me an opportunity to write a lot and write well. I've also prepared for that. I did a NIDA course early in my principalship, which gave me some great strategies for public speaking, for being present, but I also need time to regroup, hence the walk around the Botanic Gardens in the morning.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you've been able to make maximum use of your introversion, not that it's not a strength already, but to make sure that's a real strength that works for you on a day-to-day basis. My next question is about a pivotal moment in your career. Was there a promotion that you were given, a project that you took on that changed the trajectory of what you were doing?
This is going to sound really unusual on a podcast like this, but I think the pivotal moment in my career was actually the breakdown of my marriage. Because I started investing in myself, not my husband's career. And I did a Master's of Education, and then I was tapped to do my doctoral studies. And then doors just started opening, and I just started saying yes. And I was loving what I was doing, but I was investing in myself. So I had the theory behind me, I had the practice, and I was ambitious, and I allowed myself to be ambitious for myself.
So how old were you when you got divorced?
36.
And I assume that came as a shock, or it was a terrible thing at the time.
It was devastating, absolutely rocked my world. I had 2 little girls, 7 and 9, and I knew I had to be a role model, and I was very much a corporate wife at that point. And so I was a teacher. I invested in myself and kept putting my hand up.
So how did you cope physically with 2 little girls and doing a master's?
I had good people around me, good women around me, from my neighbours to good girlfriends who supported me. I didn't look back. And my mother was alive at the time, and she said to me, Toni, success is the best revenge. So I laugh about that now, but I had to pick myself up and work, and I wanted to be successful. I really wanted to do well, and I just invested in myself.
If you had your time again, would you have done the same thing? Are there any regrets about what happened at that point?
I'm deeply saddened that my marriage broke down, and I have 2 beautiful children, but I'm living Plan B, and Plan B is so much better than Plan A. I never would have been in this position. I would have been comfortable, well looked after, but not ambitious for myself in that way. I would have been living a very, very different life. And I look back on it and think it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
But I guess the lesson there is to find yourself regardless of the situation that you're in.
Yes, and marriage is a teamwork. And I understand teamwork really well now, being a CEO. If the team isn't working, then something's got to give. In many marriages, you find one person who, has the career and the other person supports it. And if that's respected and valued, then that's okay, but not at the cost of someone else's life and ambition.
Yeah, interesting, exactly. Okay. My next question is, what is the best piece of career advice that you've been given?
You only get one chance to make a first impression.
So how have you used that?
Every time you're introduced to a new audience or a new position or a new group of stakeholders, they're going to look at you very quickly and sum you up. So be prepared, be polished, really understand your audience, and then, that's the beginning of goodwill and trust.
So does that mean that you're always very conscious about anything from appearance to the way you shake someone's hand to your presence, the way you greet people?
More so of what I'm thinking, how I'm speaking, how I'm representing whoever I'm representing. I take that very seriously. And that could be as simple as, a little girl coming into the school the parents are interested in enrolling her, and I meet them at the reception and introduce myself to her. Something as simple as that to addressing, a whole cohort of students for the very first time, year 7 as they first come in, or a group of old grammarians, alumni who haven't been back to the school for 40 years and they've never met me. That first impression is important.
On that note, Toni, we're going to take a short break, but don't go away. We're going to come back very soon and open the chatterbox. See you soon. Welcome back to 15 Minutes with the Boss. I'm here with Dr. Toni Meath, the principal of Melbourne Girls Grammar. Now, Toni, this is our section called the Chatterbox. But actually, today it's a hat, so we'll call it the Chatter Hat, inside which are about, I'd say, 15 to 20 questions. I'm going to ask you to pick some out, have a bit of a shuffle, and we'll get going with some more Q&A. Thank you very much. What's a misconception people have about CEOs and leaders?
I think there's an archetypal perception of their character. They're extroverts, they're male, they're tall, they're on a horse with a sword. I'm very small, very female, and an introvert, very quiet.
So actually, given there is that stereotype, when some people meet you for the first time, are they surprised to see a shorter female, who's not riding a horse with a sword?
Absolutely. I speak to our students about that. It's almost like my cloak of invisibility. Go on, underestimate me. I feel very strong in that. So,
that's interesting. So do you think some people are inclined to underestimate you because you're not the tall bloke?
Yes, absolutely. If you look at most principals in independent schools, they're largely male, largely tall males, suited tall males. So I don't fit that mould.
And can you work that to your advantage if people think they can underestimate you?
Always.
Oh, tell me how.
Always. Last to speak. I'm a thinker, careful narrative, careful articulation. I pride myself on being a critical and creative thinker. So often the conversation has been had and then I will add something and people go, oh, that's right, Toni. So I use that to my advantage.
So use your voice sparsely.
Yes.
But wisely.
Yes.
And that has been effective for you, has it?
Yes, yes. Because also as a leader, you want to put other people forward. And I take very seriously developing the capacity of others. And especially as a teacher, you do that with students on a daily basis. And so you want to encourage their voice, their voice, their voice. But you can also come in with that careful voice. I think that's part of my suite of skills as a leader.
I love that. Okay, have another fish in the box. Sorry, in the hat. Are there any sacrifices, if any, that you've had to make in order for you to do your job?
Time.
Tell me about that.
Time. So I think being a principal, a school is all-consuming. You have to give it your all. So I was very late to leadership and my children were in university by the time I got to that point, but you don't have the luxury of time that you might have in other positions.
So is the sacrifice that you don't see enough of your family and friends as much as you would like to?
Yes, I'm a grandparent. I would love to spend more time with my grandchildren, for example, but that will come. And yeah, just being able to do things and give it a long period of time, it's always in short grabs.
Yeah, and no time just to stare at the walls blankly.
No time for that.
No, okay. Have another fish in the hat. What do you learn from students? And I'm going to add something to this. There's a lot of talk that Gen Z are lazy, good-for-nothings. They don't want to work hard and save for a house and buy a house, perhaps because they can't. But do you have confidence in the next generation of workers and leaders? And what have you learnt from them?
Yes, I am very optimistic about the future with our young people. If I start with our students, they are high energy, happy, engaged, supportive of each other, curious about the world, wanting to make a difference. And if I look at our young staff, so we have young graduate teachers and young staff, they're hardworking, they're solutions focused, they do like recognition, and that's important to celebrate as well, and for students and for all staff. But I have great confidence in the future, and I think we're in good hands.
All right, have another fish in the hat. Thank you. What was your first ever job and what did it teach you?
My first ever job was as the cook at Sports Girl in Castlereagh Street in Sydney.
The cook? I associate Sports Girl with fashion.
There was a cafe that opened and I was, employed to run the cafe. I didn't know what I was doing. I was in university and I just sort of made it up as I went, really. I'd learnt to cook at home and I said, I can do this. It was probably dreadful, but that was my first job.
Did that teach you anything about teamwork, punctuality, getting food out on time at the same time to customers?
Yes, it was always about being super prepared and just leading the team. But the team, we were all very inexperienced and we had a lot of fun, but I'm not sure it was quality Melbourne food service that I would expect today.
But nevertheless, there was a lot of organisation involved and that presumably was a skill of yours.
Yes, it was.
Did you like the job?
I got a discount at Sports Girl, which was great as a 18-year-old.
Yeah, be fantastic. Let's have one more question from the hat. What's the advice you would give your younger self?
Wow. I would tell myself that you can achieve so much more than you thought you could, and that you are more intelligent than you think you are.
Now, that's interesting. A lot of people who've come on the podcast have had a similar experience where they just didn't feel very confident in their own abilities and perhaps own intelligence at an early age. How do you think you would rectify that?
I had to grow into myself, Sally. I started university with plaits and braces and I was 17.
It's young.
It's young. And I constantly was looking around thinking, I don't even know who I am. So, yeah, I would just tell my younger self to go for it and not live in the shadow of others and just have courage.
And I guess there aren't shortcuts you can take for that, really.
I think you grow into the intellectual environment that is wrapped around you. Over the years, I have really interesting friends. I've got, dynamic people who I've made wonderful, long, whole life relationships with. And I think they've grown me as well. Travel has grown me. I grew up in Asia. And my father worked for Singapore Airlines and then Qantas, so I travelled a lot. And then when I finished university, I also backpacked.
Mm-hmm.
And so that notion of I needed time to be fully formed. Every day as a principal, CEO of a school, I draw on those experiences. So I'm glad I didn't get into leadership too quickly.
So maybe the advice for your younger self is to be patient. Like, you may not think you're intelligent and you may not think that you can achieve very much, but don't think about that. It'll be all right.
I think you're absolutely right. Don't be in a hurry.
Don't be in a hurry. Yes, I love that. Okay. On that note, you have passed the Chatter Hat with flying colours. I've got one more question which we ask everybody who comes in, and that is, if you weren't doing your current job, what would you be doing?
I would be travelling, maybe living in Japan or Paris, being a grandparent. But I've always wanted to spend a whole season in the snow. That was hijacked early. When I was backpacking, I hurried home with my skis from Austria to meet my then boyfriend at the airport where he proposed, and then I was married, and then that life sort of went on. But I've always wanted to spend a season in the snow, and I think that would be a lovely thing to do.
So you would ski, I assume, every day?
Or work, housekeep or cook or do logistics, whatever. But
so you'd quite like to go back to that sort of your backpacking days?
yeah, I think that would be great. You know, the snow is a happy place for me.
Okay. All right. Well, I wish you luck on your season in the snow. And on that note, Toni, your 15 minutes is up. Thank you so much, Toni. I really loved hearing about your introversion and the way you recharge, but also the way you can make introversion into your superpower, which is fantastic. I love the fact that people can underestimate you because you're not a tall bloke, and you can use that also to your advantage. I also love your advice to find yourself, regardless of the situation, to prioritize yourself in any marriage, in any relationship. You have to look after you. I love that you're optimistic about young people and about the future and what they can bring to our future. And also your message to your younger self to have courage. You are intelligent and it might take you a while to find it. So maybe in the meantime, be patient, which I think is really fantastic advice. So thank you so much for allowing us to spend 15 minutes with the boss.
Thank you, Sally. It's been delightful.
And thank you to everyone for listening. If you like the podcast and you want to hear more, consider sharing the podcast or writing a review, as it helps us to reach more people. And follow us wherever you get your podcasts. At the Financial Review, we investigate the big stories about markets, business and power. For more, go to afr.com, and you can subscribe to the Financial Review, the daily habit of successful people, at afr.com/subscribe. This podcast was hosted by me, Sally Patton, produced and edited by Mandy Coulin. Head of audio is Alex Gower, and our executive producer is Fiona Buffini.
The Australian Financial Review.